and welcome to Kantipur Rise and Shine. I'm your host Pratibha Thuladar. Every day, 12 to 1600 Nepalese leave this country for overseas employment. No other industry employs so many Nepalese a day. But the effect of foreign employment can be seen in the spiraling impact it has on society. Foreign remittance definitely means improved purchase capacity for the average Nepali, but it also means deserted farmlands, abandoned children, as well as a number of other socio-economic problems. Committed, a group of young people organized themselves a few years ago to help the children of migrant workers. Joining us in our studio here today is Dorje Kurung, who is the Education Program Director of the Community Members Interested Group. Dorje likes to describe himself as a Tibetan Buddhist science teacher with a Jesuit education in the Hindu country, Nepal, and international education in a Catholic country, which is Italy, and a liberal arts education in the bastion of freedom and democracy, the US. He's taught in Hong Kong, Norway, the UK, Vietnam, Azerbaijan, Malawi, USA, Nepal, Australia, Italy, and Qatar. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'd like to begin by asking you, you've taught in so many different countries in the world. How different was the experience of teaching in all these different countries?
Very different because of the culture, the traditions, the attitudes, the behaviors, and of course also because of the living conditions that I had to deal with. But it was fascinating, of course.
Where do you think you enjoyed teaching the most?
I would have to say Malawi, the small country of Malawi in southern Africa. It's just like Nepal in that it's small and it's poor, unfortunately. And the people are just amazing, really, really warm-hearted and welcoming and tolerant, just like the Nepalese people.
So what took you across the world teaching?
What took me across the world? My senior year at Grinnell, after having spent 2 years in Italy and 4 years at Grinnell in Iowa, I'd had lots of friends from all over the world. I'd met lots of friends all over the world. I'd made lots of friends from all over the world. And I realized that I wanted to see the worlds that they talked about for myself. And that's what got me abroad and teaching. I distinctly remember an afternoon with a friend of mine towards the end of my senior year, sitting down with her one afternoon, late afternoon, and she actually asked me, so what do you want to do? And I remember telling her, I want to go see the world. And that's what I've done.
But now you're back here after teaching all these countries.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, all the time I've been abroad, I've always told myself, I want to go home. I need to go home to provide the kind of opportunities that I've had to the next generation of youngsters in Nepal. Because I come from a low socioeconomic background. I was not supposed to have even gone to school. I was not supposed to have graduated from high school. I wasn't supposed to have gone to university. I wasn't supposed to have done any of this.
What do you mean you weren't supposed to have gone to school?
My family was not wealthy enough to be able to send me to school, but I was lucky. The third government school I was studying at, one of the teachers there recognized my potential and told my dad, you know, if you want to see your child succeed, take him to Kathmandu, find him a good private school, put him in there. My dad, we didn't have the funds to send me to an expensive private school, but I was lucky, and when he came to Kathmandu and asked around, he was pointed in, one of the directions he was pointed in was St. Xavier's here in Kathmandu, and I was admitted, and my parents could afford to send me there because of the low fees, and the rest is history. I came across, there were teachers there who were from abroad, the Jesuit priests, the Canadian teachers, the North American teachers that we had, they all, of course, basically incited my imaginations, fired up my imaginations about abroad, teaching, studying, working abroad, and that's where I got the idea to go abroad to study. And
So a lot of people, they go abroad, study, work there, and then they don't want to come back to Nepal to work.
Right.
But you're one of the people who've done that. What inspired you to do that?
Again, it goes back to my background, where I came from, where I started, how I started. And most of the last 15, 16 years, I've always come home almost once every year just to keep my connection to home. And pretty much every time I'd come home, I'd go travel, I'd go to the countryside, trek, hike, and basically still keep my, I guess, connection with the rural population of Nepal. And when I'd be out there, I'd go talk to kids in the streets, kids that I would meet. And as a matter of fact, when I'd go to Pokhara, I'd go back to my schools, the government schools that I attended every single time, just to see how things were, just to remind myself that that's where I came from. And these years that I've done that, of course, the pull for me to come back was stronger and stronger and stronger. And I realized after my 2 years in Qatar, where I found, discovered, learned about the plight of Nepalese migrant workers, I realized education is more than anything. Education is extremely necessary, absolutely crucial for Nepalese out there, who are out there, to not suffer the way that they're suffering. And that became even more urgent when I myself suffered when I was in Qatar. That's basically what changed everything.
I'd like to talk a little about, you just mentioned the plight of the Nepali workers in Qatar, and then you mentioned education. So do you consider it, education, the factor that keeps them from actually getting their rights as workers, or is it merely because they're in a foreign country where they cannot speak the local language, or is it because our government is not strongly present in that country? What do you consider a major factor?
There are, I'm sure there some of those the factors that you mentioned are factors, but being a teacher, for me, I think it's education first. That's a factor. Education here is so poor, and especially for the people, the Nepalese who come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, because of their access to education, they don't get to finish school. And when they don't get to finish school, they're coming from a low socioeconomic background anyway. When they don't finish school, they don't have too many opportunities here. And of course, they very easily get duped by unscrupulous middlemen, agents, and so on. And of course, once they get to their destination country, again, because of lack of education, they don't know their rights. They don't have the contacts. They don't have the relationships, and they, of course, suffer even more. And I think, again, being a teacher, I think if we start early with young children in schools, especially in government schools, because that's where most of the children from low socioeconomic background go, if we start with a good educational foundation, not just being able to read and write, but also an education that provides them with skills that they can actually use once they graduate from school, they can stay here and they can work and they can make a decent living.
I was reading your blog, and you talk about how Nepali workers in Qatar are treated differently, and you know how there's been a series of stories lately on the treatment of foreign workers in Qatar, starting from the one on the Guardian. From your personal experience, how would you describe how Nepalese are treated there? And also I want you to talk about the kafala system, about how does that restrict workers' rights?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, in Qatar, partly because the Nepalese workers are so visible, there are a large number of Nepalese workers. From what I understand now, the single most construction workers from a country are Nepalese. They number the highest, and therefore they are at the bottom of the social ladder, and hence not treated well. I mean, like you said, all of these articles have come out, and they've clearly, they clearly indicate that the Nepalese are treated really badly. And Some of those articles describe what happens there, and I've heard, I've seen, I've heard directly from individuals who work there that is indeed true. That is indeed what happens. Maybe not to everyone, but to a significant, that happens to a significant population of Nepalese. And what happens with the kafala system is that it's a system where the employer, who is generally a Qatari, has the right to basically dictate whether the worker gets to leave the country, whether the worker gets to change jobs. Unfortunately, they won't allow that. The employer generally won't allow someone that they've employed to change jobs or leave the country at will.
So and you're almost like a commodity.
Right, right. And the way they ensure that is by withholding their passport, for instance. In order for an employer to be able to leave the country, of course, they've got to get the passport. And not only a passport, they need to get permission from the employer to get what's called an exit visa. And without the passport and without permission for an exit visa, they're basically beholden to the employer. Unfortunately.
Let's come back to your project. Tell us about how the Raithani School has been functioning over the past years and how you intend to garner support or raise funds for your school project.
Well, okay, before I get into Raithani School, I should probably say something about our non-profit. Committed, Committed as a short form for community members interested. I work with a very good friend of mine that I've known since grade 2 at St. Xavier's, Jaijeev. He's the founder and the executive director, and he's been running the school, running the NGO since 2005. And he started working at Raithani School since 2009, around 2009. And now, since coming back, I've been back 7 months now. Right after coming back, I ran a major fundraising drive, and we raised over $30,000. And those funds will be allocated to improving infrastructure, improving resources, improving teaching methods, and also, and this is the crucial bit, also establishing what we call a social business for education. And at Raithani, the social business project is a fishery. We've already initiated that. The whole idea behind the fishery is that it is run like a business, and it's run by the school and the community jointly, and significant part of the profit from the business will be used by the school to provide free education, even though the government's supposed to provide free education in the rural countryside.
So this is free education, sorry to interrupt you, so this is free education for the children of migrant workers? No,
actually this is at our project site. I'll talk about that later. This is free education to the kids of the community of Thangpalkot in Sindapalchok. So the funds provided by the government, they're not enough to basically cover some of the basic costs, such as uniform, stationery, and the families are so poor that they can't afford that. So this project, the fishery, the profits from the fishery will enable the school to provide them. Also, some of the funds that the government provide is not enough to even pay for the salaries of all the teachers that are needed. The fishery will provide salaries for those teachers. Now, coming back to the migrant children, we also have what we call a sponsorship program, where we find individuals who are willing to, are interested in sponsoring kids at our school in Raithani. But just recently, we also started a sponsorship program for kids of migrants who've died abroad. We sponsor one family of 7 children. And the 3 programs, the ticketed dinner this evening, ticketed dinner tomorrow, and the open-air concert in Darbar Marg. there are two aims to that, two objectives, two purposes. The first one is to raise awareness about the plight of migrant workers. And the second one is to raise funds to finance the education of children of migrants.
How will you use a concert to raise awareness of the situation of migrant workers?
Well, we've got speeches, we've got speakers. We'll have information about
slides.
Slides. We've got NGOs who will be coming and distributing literature about the plights. We're in touch with about a dozen NGOs who are also working doing advocacy work for migrants.
Okay. Okay, this is what you're doing right now as a fundraising event.
Yeah.
Do you have similar plans for the future, or how will you sustain? Sustain, you know?
Right. There are plans. We don't have definite plans. However, most of the sponsorships that we've gotten for kids have been through through committed publicizing the stories of children. For instance, just recently we got into a partnership with a Swedish businessman. He has basically agreed with us to provide a certain portion of the sale from his business to the sponsorship of children. That will be ongoing, for instance. So we're looking at not just individuals who want to offer $100 a month, but also individuals like businesses like him. This is only the beginning. This program, this awareness program that we've organized, this is only the first one. There will be many more to come.
Have you kind of planned what else you will be doing in future?
Well, this is what I'm going to be keeping at. The Raithani School, once we've set that up, we hope to replicate that in other parts of the country. The fishery, we basically started it last August, and we had our second visit earlier last month. And we started with 2 cages, and last month, early December, we added 2 more cages. The fishery is in a little pond next to the school. We've added 2 more cages, and so this will continue to expand. We've got a fishery expert helping us, working with us, and once that is set up at Raithani, we'll be looking at replicating that elsewhere, and basically looking at not just education, but also livelihood. The fishery at the school is not just for the school, for education, but also for the community. We are hoping to get the community involved in also starting their own little fishery in their back garden. For instance, one of them might want to start a nursery. We'll be helping them with that. So if we address education and livelihood, our hope is that the rural population of Nepal won't have to leave the country to work abroad and be exploited the way they are being exploited.
In my mind, that just I was just thinking about farming when you're talking about these things, because, you know, with people going abroad for employment, one of the problems the country is facing is that farmlands have been left without barren, and farming is also a sort of a profession where the family has to be involved. So it's almost like the father passes it on to the son, right? Because there's a continuation of it. And now with people gone, that isn't happening. Is there a link between that and what you're trying to do at the school with?
Yes,
with
definitely.
The fisheries and
the fishery. This is something. This is actually my passion. What we're going to do, in addition to raising money, in addition to the fishery being a business, it will serve as a project site for the school kids. The science teacher, first, in rural schools, science education is basically getting the kids to memorize what's in the book. They don't have labs, they hardly do any practical work. But with this project, the fishery will be a project site for the school kids, and I will be working with the science teacher I've already developed a curriculum where fishery will be integrated with the science curriculum. And the kids will go to the fishery. They will actually work. So
it's more learning by doing.
Yes, exactly. So not only will they reinforce the science concepts that they're supposed to learn in the classroom, going to the fishery and working, but they will also learn skills about fishing, about fishery, about running a fishery, about fish, and so on. And hopefully, they will have acquired enough skills by the time they leave school for them to actually not only just start a fishery, but also about entrepreneurship and so on. And in the next village, it might not be fishery. As a matter of fact, we've got a school just outside Bhaktapur where we started a vegetable garden. And I will be doing the same thing with that vegetable garden and the students at the school, integrating the vegetable garden with the science curriculum. And it won't be just with science, it will also be English, and if they're doing 10+2, business and accounting, all of the other subjects, well, that's my dream, will be integrated with the project.
I understand you're somebody who believes in how little things make a difference to the world, and I think that's a great philosophy. But that also brought me to the thought about how our country has this, our population is so diverse, and in terms of education, you have the most expensive schools, whereas we also have community schools you just talked about, where they don't even have enough funds for a teacher. As somebody who has been in the education field for so long and who's taught at the most expensive schools as well as seen these community schools, do you feel that we'll ever be able to bridge this gap?
Well, I don't think we need to actually bridge the gap. I think what we can do is in schools, in rural Nepal, and also in Kathmandu Valley, even in the cities, in the government schools, I think we can make a significant improvement in the education of those children by just improving, by just modifying the way we teach, the way the teachers teach. The teachers at these government schools, they're committed. However, unfortunately, we've got a culture where teaching is seen as getting the kids to memorize. If we can just change that a little bit, if we can just improve on the methodology, there will be significant improvement in the education. So we don't need, all of these government schools to be expensive private schools, or we don't need the kinds of facilities that private schools have at these government schools to make a huge impact on the education of the children. No, we don't. I don't think so. I think all we need to do to make a significant improvement in the education of the children is to improve the quality of teaching. And that doesn't take much. You don't need thousands of dollars for that. You don't need fancy buildings for that. You don't.
My next question would be, with your, and this might be the last question, with your Qatar case, you had a lot of intellectual backing, a lot of intellectuals supported your case, and that made a difference. I'm also wondering, because you have the support of this whole chunk of people who are the more influential people in our society, do you think you'd be working in any way to influence the policy related to migrant workers?
I've only been back 7 months. I guess one step at a time. Education being my passion, that's where I've started, and I think I'll continue with this for a bit. That is there, I'll have to think about that. I probably at some point, sometime down the line, but right now, my concern is education. That's where I'm focusing, and that's where I will be focusing for a while.
Thank you for joining us on our show today.
May I just say something about the program?
Yes.
So, this evening, Capital Grill, Pat Patani, ticketed dinner, and tomorrow at Radisson Hotel, also ticketed dinner. And then on the 11th, the open-air concert at Darbar Square in Kathmandu.
Thank you. We're talking to Dorje Gurung, who is the Education Program Director of Community Members Interested. Thank you for watching.